Pat's Pizza and Bistro, 1426 West Broad Street, Bethlehem, PA. One of my favorite places to go in the Valley, and they came on as a sponsor. Yanni's been on the podcast before. He's had me up there from tastings. I've had everything from the chicken fingers, which are made from scratch, all the way up to the brand new pasta flights. The pasta flights are trending. They are flying off the shelves. It's insane that they can even keep up. I met the chef over there. Legit, no joke stuff going on. They use clean ingredients, real food, fresh food. It is family owned, family operated. It is very fast and furious. If you go to their online website, it is right here. You can get all this information. You can order there. You can place pickup orders. You can have delivery on certain days, and the hours of operation are on there as well. Please go check them out. I am not just saying this. They are a legit force to be reckoned with in the Valley. That's Pat's Pizza and Bistro, 1426 West Broad Street, Bethlehem, PA. Luke Delmeyer knives, handcrafted, handmade knives. I use mine every time we go to the pop-ups, and it is ridiculous. It is just something special. There's something different. It's handcrafted. It's handmade. Luke has grown since we started the show to now, where he is pumping out knives and classes. I want to push his classes. If you go to lukedelmeyer.com, it has all the information for the classes, and you get to take a 2-day course, and you go over everything from safety on how to use it. You're selecting the knife handles out, and you're really from top to bottom getting to go through the whole experience. Where else can you find that in the Valley? Luke is a very special person to the show. He's really cool. We've done projects together. We have apparel we're doing together. I really want you to go check it out. If you're interested in anything, handcrafted stuff, working class stuff, blue collar stuff, like this is the area you need to go to. But it's lukedelmeyer.com, Luke Delmeyer, handcrafted knives. Sign up for those classes, those courses. Go check that out. It's really cool. It's a 2-day event, and you get to experience making your own knife, and then you take your knife home with you. And you're going to take home a little bit more than that. So check out Luke Delmeyer, friend of the show. Always awesome watching him grow. LukeDelmeyer.com. MindleafCBD.com. Mindleaf. Easton Zone, Mindleaf CBD. I didn't know a lot about CBD till they became a sponsor and they started coming on the show a lot. And Liz is huge for, I learn something every time she comes on. They are over in College Hill in Easton. You can check out all their information on mindleafcbd.com. I believe you can order there, but go experience the store. Liz's mom works over there. Liz keeps bringing in products such as the honey flights. They have peanut butter, the infused pretzels. My favorite thing is the tinctures to go to sleep. I have problems sleeping, and these things put me out, and I have a little bit of lucid dreams riding a unicorn, and then I wake up back to normal, and then I get excited to do that again. So my big thing I use with them is the tinctures and the balm. The balm is another one. I use it for aches and pains on my knees, and my old man uses it for his arthritis. Mindleaf CBD. They are over in Easton on College Hill. Please go check the store out. Really cool space, and like I said, Liz's mom's over there, and they will help you with everything. It's awesome that they're super local, and I stand behind their CBD and everything that they got coming out of there. That's Mindleaf CBD, mindleafcbd.com. Eric K. Dowdle, defense attorney. We had him on the show, and what crazy stories this guy's had. He's helped a ton of people over the years, and if you're looking for help, he is your guy. You can contact them at 610-882-3000, and it's ekdefense.com. Do you have a pending court case? Do you have a court appearance and need a defense lawyer? Do you need proper representation? Felony, misdemeanor, drug offense, assault, homicide, DUI, traffic violation, appeals. Reach out to Eric. Check out the podcast we did with him as well. It has his whole story on there. If you need help, Eric is here to help you. He sponsors the show. We appreciate it. He's going to be doing a monthly thing with us. Eric will be a part of the family now. Thank you for sponsoring. Never Again Radio episode. I have no clue what we are on. Welcome to Never Again Radio.
Hello,
it's a quick
Michael.
Start. We just jump in. If I wouldn't stop talking, and then we would be stuck down here. I believe Jared LaBarba.
Yes.
All Valley Rooter and Plumbing.
Yes, the best plumber in the Valley.
He is. He was our first sponsor, I believe. Jared was the first one who was like, yo, I'd like to get on what you're getting on. I've known Jared for a very, very, very long time. He's one of my favorite people ever. He's probably top 3 funniest people I've ever met.
Very dry, sarcastic.
Yeah. And I think you started following me, and then I think I checked your stuff out, but I wasn't digging through it. And then I had lunch with him, and he was like, hey, he's like, my friend's doing this thing, or this woman I know. And then I was like, oh, I know who that is, because I like put 2 and 2 together with following it. And then when we got on the phone, I like was really excited to deep dive into this. So you do, why don't you just kind of introduce your show and then kind of explain what you do, so then I don't butcher it.
Absolutely. So the podcast I have is Departed in Pennsyltucky. It's all true crime that happened in the state of Pennsylvania. And it just kind of came about on a whim. I'm also a full-time realtor in Easton, Freebridge Realty. Shout out.
Yes.
And I was looking to do something that was just for me. I didn't have to answer to anybody, just like what you're doing here. No one's telling you what to do. Creative. I have all the creative control that I want. And so the idea came, I was looking at cases online, or like some type of murder that happened in the area.
Were you always into like murder and mystery and watch TV shows?
Yeah, and
about it?
my husband makes fun of me because I love Keith Morrison. I think Keith Morrison is the shit. I don't know if you know who he is.
No.
He's on Dateline. He's the guy that talks like this.
Yeah,
he's cool. He's actually Matthew Perry's stepdad. Matthew Perry from Friends.
Yeah.
And he's a cool guy. He wears like Converse with these really cool socks and
hip. Sounds hip.
And I always liked the way he narrated a story. And I was thinking, there's so many crazy things that happen in the Valley. Like there should really be a podcast that focuses on all the crime, even in the Valley or in Pennsylvania. So I started writing down all these cases. I had like 20, 25 cases. I said to my husband, I said, you know what, I want to do a podcast. And he looked at me like, yeah, okay, right. And I just thought of the name, and, I
like the Pennsyltucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Pennsylvania is just like kind of boring. And I found somebody that wanted to do the artwork I wanted, and
it's fun. It's like a postcard.
Yeah, that's what it's based on, the old like welcome with the big bubble letters. Mm-hmm. And now I'm here talking to you.
What did you do to kind of take steps into doing the podcast? Because I know like when like I've met people and I know people that are like really into like, they call it like the murder channel. And it's just all like, the stories of like people being murdered and shit like that. And, my mom always dives into it nonstop with like Lifetime and all these stuff. So I'm constantly around it. I don't really get into it till like this time of the year, like when it's like fall, it's getting colder. Like, you can really get into the vibe, which is when what I said to you with bringing you on is like, I was excited to do this because it's like fitting into like, it's becoming fall, it's Halloween, these stories. And then, to take that passion and then to turn it into it, it's cool because like when you wrote down like 25, I'm like, oh, well, that's 25 episodes. And then like you're already thinking on how to create and produce a podcast with not even the know-how at that point. What was the first thing you did? Did you like Google like, what do I need for a podcast?
Well,
because it's not the easiest thing to do, especially if you don't know audio in general.
I knew nothing. I started listening to podcasts because there is a famous cold case in our area, Holly Brannigan. It's over 40 years old. She was 17 years old, Freedom High School student that was stabbed. To this day, no arrests or anything. It's like a big mystery. And I heard that there was a podcast that talked more about it in detail and had things to say about it that I hadn't known. And the podcast was True Crime Garage. And it's 2 guys out of Ohio, and I just liked how they talked. For having it being 2 people, they were respectful. They weren't talking like Valley Girls, like, oh my God, can you believe that?
Yeah.
And I really liked it, so I started just listening to more podcasts.
Yeah.
And when I had this idea, like maybe back in the winter, I kind of thought of like how they did it, how they wrote the script and how they talked. And it was kind of hard because it's just me. I don't have a co-host. So that was kind of a challenge.
The other thing too is like, I got into listening to that style of podcast, and I like it because, like we were talking earlier, is it's storytelling, and I like good storytelling, and you can bullshit about it, but when it comes down to like the facts and all that, you do need to write something out. I'm sure there's people who don't, but like in order to have the facts correct, you can't just wing murder information.
No.
So like to me, it was always like, wow, that's such a different genre of podcasting because it's a lot more work. It's a lot more research. It's a lot more writing out. You're almost reporting. But I got into a couple where it was Detective Joe Kenda, and it was like
my husband loves him.
Yeah, like it was early on when he first started coming on the scene, and then podcasting was still, it was like right on the cusp of popping, where like, now HBO's like, hey, we got a podcast after this episode to talk more on it, where they used to have an after show. So like his stuff was awesome because there was somebody reading a script, and then they would interject and interview him about how it happened, and it's a totally different style of podcasting, and it's always intrigued me, but it's way more work than doing this.
And it's interesting because I think the tone of your voice has a lot to do with it.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
immediately, if you don't like the person's voice, you're out.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's people who probably listen to mine and be like, she sucks, and that's okay.
Same here. Everyone's probably like, stop pinching your nose.
But one thing I didn't like, because I did look at other like really popular like true crime podcasts, and I won't call them out here because I think it's kind of rude, but some of them where it's like, I'll say it's two women, it's a co-host and a host, and they're just, again, talking like Valley Girl, like, oh my God, do you have my coffee? And you can hear them like, swishing their like iced coffee.
A little too comfortable.
And I feel like ultimately you're talking about somebody who was murdered.
Yeah.
So the way that I do it is if a family member of a victim was listening, I would want them to be pleased with the final product.
Yeah. And I think you do a really good job of that.
Thank you.
When I started getting into the genre of that, it was something that like I was kind of like, I go through spurts where like, I've been listening to podcasts since the early days. So like there's so many now where it's like you don't have enough hours. It's like audiobooks. You're never going to have enough time to do it. But when I got into doing the true crime stuff, I really enjoyed like the tone, or if I had like a long car ride, it's almost like you're going away and you're watching a movie unfold if the person does it correctly. How long did it take for you to kind of, and I know you're still early on to it, but like, were you pleased right away with like what the product was, or did you listen to it and be like, holy shit, this is completely wrong? Or like, what was the steps of what you did to kind of like get ready to do it? Because you do have to write a lot of stuff out. I mean, did you write a lot growing up? Did you have a background in writing? Like, where did it come from?
Not at all. I think for me, the way I work is I'm better at writing things down and saying it.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but
well, it's kind of like you take cues from it. Or the early days of doing this, I would write like one word, and then I would be like, okay, well, I can't express that on paper, but I know exactly where I'm going to go reading it while we're interviewing.
And I try to write it so that if you close your eyes, you can picture yourself with what I'm talking about. When I describe like the scene or the town, I kind of got that idea from the guys at True Crime Garage, and that's why I liked it, because they made me feel like
you're there.
I was actually there.
Yeah. Did what was it like to start diving into doing your first stuff? Because you're obviously into this, but now it's like, and I want to get into it later, where you kind of want to play a bigger role in some of these unsolved cases with like putting the information out there. But like, what was that like to start doing the research? Like, that must have just taken you out of life in general.
It does.
Went down a rabbit hole.
You know what? It does. And I think about detectives or people who work on a murder case, how emotionally draining it is, because
I didn't pick up on that till the Detective Joe Kenda stuff, and he was open about his drinking problem.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, because he said the kids, finding dead kids, murdered children, he said it doesn't leave you. And like, that's what was appealing about it, because it was raw and real. And he talked about like how he would go to a bar afterwards and like would drink, and like his wife, it was a known problem between them, but like it was something that she knew he was like needing to do. And then eventually, I think it's why it was one of the main reasons he got out of that, was just couldn't deal with the constant death. I don't know how, like we were talking about the guy who did the background on the TV behind you and like the intro to the show. He does editing for the first 48.
Yeah.
And then when he explained that you're just editing the footage of murdered people all day, I was like, oh, that's terrible. That's got to put you somewhere.
It does. And when you do the research and you're reading about how the crime was committed, and the other thing too is I try to really get a background of the victim. So people know the show is really about the victim. And I think about what they did that day that they were murdered. You know, they just got up like everybody else, got dressed, how they felt. And when you go into the details of the person who did it, I'm just so ready for me to be done with that episode because it stays with you. And
yeah.
You think about it and you just want it. It's almost like going outside and getting dirty, working in the yard. You just want to come in and take a shower. That's why when I'm done and I record the episode, I'm like, all right, on to the next one.
Yeah, it's got to be a lot to carry. I mean, even, and we'll jump into this with kind of the main reason you're here and the timing and the dates and everything. But the one I was getting into last night when you were going over how they found her and like you were like, she was in a pool of her own blood for this amount of time. And I was like, man, that was not like it like I was like, wow, it's fucked up. Like
Yeah.
that person laid there like that. Like you was very blunt how you did it, but it's like it made you feel how you should feel about it. It's a murder.
Yeah.
Like you're supposed to feel all that, but you did a good job of bringing that out. And then I was just like, how much time's left? Like, and then I was like, because it's 2 parts, and I was like, but that's another thing I do like about that, where it's like you can touch it a little bit, and then it's like, all right, well, I just want to come in here a little bit, and then I'm gonna close the door, and as a listener, like I'll just come and go, because that's why I said, I can't do that all the time because of how I'm wired, where I'll be depressed. So like I like being able to like, once a week touch a podcast like that and then pull out of it and then kind of like want more to go back in. It's like kind of like getting into horror movies and stuff like that. Like you just have a feel for like your emotions on what you want to do. But like, yeah, it's got to be crazy to read the whole story, write a script out, and then you have to punch it in certain perspectives to get the listeners to know what you're going through. It's got to be an emotional roller coaster.
And again, ultimately, I want the victim to be remembered.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, I mean, not so much the crime, not so much the person that did it, but to remember them, even if it was like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I think it's important because the families don't forget.
No, and you don't know who's going to Google to see if there's new information, and then you have somebody who knows that, and then like, oh, well, they didn't handle this correctly. You did a good job of that because I'm sure there's some shows that just highlight the murder where you actually highlighted the person's life before it goes. And I do like that in the storytelling because you forget that it's ending terrible. And then you're like, oh, well, this person was so happy and she was a realtor and this was her life and they had troubles coming up, but they were just, it was regular people. And you did a very good job of describing regular people, but then the tragedy's coming. And sometimes when you do a good job of that, you forget that there's a shitty ending to this. And then there's usually like a pause, and I like the music and all that playing in the background, and then we're like, all right, well, we're coming here. But you don't punch people into it. You're like, you're taking them by the hand, and you're like, all right, well, here's this family and these wonderful things, and then now I got to take you over here, and you don't want to go, and you do a very nice slow introduction, and then before you know it, you're in it already. And then you're like, man, this is what I want. What this was, it's a murder podcast. Now we're in the murder, but I feel like you bring the guests there in a very natural manner, and it's not too over the top, or it's not done for show. It's not done for sound bites. Like you actually give a shit about the craft that you're creating.
And, again, going back to the victim and talking about their life, like this episode that we're going to talk about, Charlotte Fimiano, it was important for me that people knew who she was as a person. so that, or any of these people in the story, so that at the end, you think, wow, that was a great person. That was a really shitty thing that happened. That sucks.
And you don't know what that's going to spark in someone who's going to look into it further, or if the case will get picked back up. You don't know who's ever going to listen or touch your stuff. Let's just dive into the episode, and like kind of give us a background, because it is somebody from the Valley. So kind of give us a background on like who the person was, and then we'll kind of get into the case, and then we'll just naturally, I'll just have questions about it.
Absolutely. So the case that I have this week, it's called Time is of the Essence. It's a term used in real estate, the cold case of Charlotte Fimiano. September 11th, which was just on Sunday, was the 25th anniversary of her murder, which is a cold case. One of the most popular and most talked about cold cases in the Lehigh Valley. So she was 40 years old when she was murdered. She was a badass realtor. I'm just going to say that. She was amazing. She was the top 2% in Weichert's, and she worked for Weichert, so in the company. And
are they still around?
Weichert's still around. And she started off, she was a single young mother, like 19 or 20 when she had her daughter. She didn't even have a car, but she worked in a local plastics factory, walked her daughter to daycare or got rides to work, and slowly just worked her way up, into sales. And she was a very caring, personable person, and people liked her. She was outgoing. And at some point, she worked in a bridal salon, and it was when she worked there, she decided to become a realtor, and she just flourished. And so basically what happened was, September 10th, she worked for Weichert. She was in the office with another realtor. They did something called floor time, where the realtors are assigned to work in the office and take phone calls or walk-ins of just, somebody interested in buying a house or selling. The idea is when the realtor, attends to that potential client, it's their client, they would get the sale. And while she was there that day, she got a phone call from a man that wanted to see a home at 2147 Chelsea Lane. And this home, I feel, is very key to this case, because it was a vacant, secluded home that she was murdered in.
How close was it to this area here?
It's actually pretty close.
Did you drive to it yet?
Oh, well, this is the interesting thing. When you read about the case online, they keep saying Saucon Valley, Saucon Valley, Saucon Valley. But it really wasn't located in Saucon Valley. It was more of Hellertown. Yeah. And Hellertown is like, back then, this is 97, it was like a working class town. People that lived there primarily like worked at the Bethlehem Steel. The houses were just modest Cape Cods or ranchers. And this house, as you head out to Hellertown on the outskirts, it becomes more rural.
It's very rural.
And this Chelsea Lane looked more like a driveway. And the people that were selling the house bought it, purchased the land, and it was a really beautiful tri-level contemporary home. And it was secluded. Like, even when I was doing research for the story and I Googled the address, I was like, I can't believe this is where the house is, because I've driven by this. It's a road.
Yeah, that area back there is when we go to Fieldstone Roasters, or we go to like kind of like the back way to Philly almost. That area, if you go back that way, where it like starts because it like kind of touches towards Regalsville and stuff, like that whole area is like super like woods and back roads. You can get lost back there.
Well, this is interesting because where Chelsea Lane is, it's where Easton Road and Cherry Lane kind of intersect. And Chelsea Lane's a little bit before that. But it looks like a driveway that belongs to two houses that face Easton Road. People, I'm like still stunned that this is called a road, because it looks like a driveway. And even when you stand at Easton Road and you look up, you can't see this house. And the interesting thing about this house was it was listed with another brokerage for about, I don't know how many months, but it didn't sell, probably because of the price. It's probably priced too high for that area. Yeah. And then Weichert got the listing, and it was an agent in the Bethlehem office where Charlotte worked. Again, it wasn't Charlotte. And back then in 97, you didn't have sites like Zillow or Realtor.com where if you wanted to look for a home,
People flying drones over stuff.
yeah, I mean, you didn't know. The only way to find, if you were looking for a house, you would look in the classifieds on like Sunday. You know, they had listings and even the pictures. Like,
What a simpler time.
yeah, exactly. It was.
Yeah.
I mean, realtors really worked back then. You know, like now, houses sell themselves. People know what they want when they go and look online. But if you went and back then and looked in the classifieds, you had like a little picture, a description. The house wouldn't say it was vacant.
It's like black and white picture.
Yeah, black and white picture, and it was expensive back then to run, you know, classified ads. Or you could go to a realtor and they had something what was called a MLS book, and it was real thick like a phone book, and it had all the listings in the area, and it was updated every 2 weeks. So then, let's say I would come to you and say, you know, Michael, I'm looking for a house. You're like, okay. You pull out your book and you flip through like the pages. And my point to this is not that many people would know about that house except for the people in that office, including Charlotte. And there was also a key to that house as well. I don't know if there was a lockbox there. I know the owners were very prideful of that house, and because it was secluded, they might not have wanted a lockbox. So they might have said, look, I just want a key at the office. Whoever wants to see it has to come to the office, retrieve the key, return it when they're done.
Do you think that, so you think that because of the way it was set up and the way the house is, that there's things that weren't, yeah, because I mean, now that you point this out, and this is what's interesting about diving back into this stuff, is people forget how it used to be. When you were saying that, I was like, man, I remember like driving around with my parents, and they would just go look at homes for sale. Like, we drove around, and it was something that we would do to just go out for a drive, and I was like, holy shit, like, you forget what it was like without the internet. Nobody was connected, and that there were only a certain amount of people that knew about stuff. Or like, I remember my mom being on the phone and being like, because they'd just talk about getting property, and then they, you know, like one of their friends would call the landline and then be like, hey, we stumbled upon this, and they'd give you directions, and it was really only word of mouth. You knew stuff. And I mean, even back when we were kids, down by the Penny Hole, there's a huge mansion there now, but there was an abandoned house there, and I feel like there was a lot more abandoned things back in the day because people didn't know that they existed because they weren't all over the internet. So when you start saying this house, you couldn't see it in the road, I was like, well, what's she getting at with this? But what you're saying is back then, the only people who would have known about that location were the people who were dealing with the house, and you wouldn't stumble across it because it's not something that you would find walking through a field. And that area all by itself alone, it's not something that you can kind of just walk through people's backyards because it's literally the woods. And it's one of the only pieces in this area, unless you start going up towards Wallenpaupack, that is really like not overdeveloped.
And this house, it sat on, I believe it was like 3.65 acres.
Yeah.
It had a lot of land. It wasn't covered by trees, but surrounding it was woods.
And back in the day, too, it's also not how things were, where, you know, private property, like, you could get shot going on somebody's property, especially when you were in an area where it was people-owned acreage. Like, I remember being as a kid, and we were always, hey, don't go on that guy's property at all. The farmer, like, he does not put up with shit. Like, it's not like now where somebody would call the cops and then you have a discussion. Like, it was wild back then growing up. I mean, we talked about it before the show started about growing up in the 80s and 90s. It was a different time. And
that's why, you know, the intimate knowledge, the person, including Charlotte, knew, like I said, the house is key.
Yeah.
So going back to like the setup of this person calling. So this person supposedly called the day before and requested to see this home. So then Charlotte subsequently says to the listing agent, hey, somebody called, or I have a client that wants to see your listing.
Did they request her?
They talked to her directly.
Yeah.
That was the information that I received. So the next day, September 11th, you know, she wakes up, does her thing.
Do you think it was targeted, or do you think it was whoever answered that phone that day?
You mean somebody targeted her?
Yeah.
I have my theory.
Yeah.
About who did it and why.
Do you release that in the second episode?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a list.
I wanted more when it was over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do go through possible suspects and motives, and then I end with.
Do you go through the police reports? I'm so interested in this now.
You know what? I have no knowledge of. I don't. The only thing I knew was some things from her autopsy, but that was stuff that I found through doing research. Like,
because there's all that stuff, and because now I'm going to talk to my co-host, who we can do the next time we do this. I'll bring him on because he's I can't think of it. It's not a bounty hunter. Bail bondsman. So he has access to stuff. So I'm gonna talk to him. I wonder if that's public records, whether you can like dig in to see who was interviewed about that murder, or like is that kept in an archive?
Well, it's interesting because in preparation for this episode and subsequently, Lehigh Valley Live ran an article on Sunday about this, the 25th anniversary. And I did speak to somebody at the state police who's in charge of the cold cases. And
you talk to Lehigh Valley Live at all about anything?
You know what? I did send them an email and I said, hey, I'm doing this podcast. Would you do a story? And, the person that wrote the story was a different person who I contacted. So I don't know if they just did it on their own. And to me, it wasn't. The article didn't really go in depth. It just kind of highlighted some things. And
I'm banned from their page.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did you do?
And I don't want to take us out of the mood of this because I was being set in the mood. But when I used to work at the Newburgh Deli, I always thought like some of the reporting was just, and I get it, you have to have a story every day, but some of it was just like clickbait, like weird, like stuff. So I started pretending to be something involved in the story. Like I would take the side of like what they were writing about, and I'd be like, well, that's ridiculous because this is the way I feel. And then I kept pushing it because personally, but what was funny is like I was getting more likes on my comments than they were getting on the article because other people saw it. And then eventually I think they were tired of my nonsense and then they blocked me. But it was fun while it lasted. Like what was crazy is I would have people from Lehigh Valley Live liking it. Like they thought it was funny, and then I think I just went too far with some stuff, and then they blocked me.
Somebody's a little too sensitive there.
And it was before cancel culture or anything. But it was funny because then it was like I had people arguing with me because I would be like, nah, that's how I think. I was just trolling people. And Lehigh Valley Live knew I was trolling people. My friends knew it was, but we laughed so hard at work all the time because I would post it, and then my boss's wife would start dying laughing, and she's like, "You posted that?" I'm like, "I don't care." Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever be unblocked, but yeah, that's why I asked if you talked to anyone because I didn't know if they
being interviewed by a rebel.
Yeah, I didn't know if a troll, a nasally troll. I didn't know if like you reached out to anyone or anyone has like wanted to work with you on some of the stuff that you put out, or I don't know how that works. If a newspaper would want to be like, oh, that's cool, or they're kind of territorial to their story.
I'll go back to I did talking to the state police, and I introduced myself. I said who I was, and I said I'm just curious, with this.
How was that? Do they retrieve stuff like that?
Well, the guy that I talked to was a little douchey, and I think he was a little not mad. He was a little self-defensive because I said, well, this case is sitting on a shelf collecting dust.
Yeah.
And it is, and he said, well, we every year, annually, we review the cases, and I was just thinking, yeah, right.
But I mean, even if you do, I know how, like, if you're working somewhere and you're trying to figure something out, and every year you try and go over it again to make the business better or something, after a while, you're just like, you kind of like, man, look, it's stuck. So how much time do you really put into it every year?
Well, I know this. I know we can go back into like more details or whatever, but she was found fully clothed with her coat on. She was strangled and she was shot in the back of the head, and she was shot in her face under her left eye. They tested the clothes she was wearing, and they didn't say where she was found, but it had to be like a bedroom or somewhere else because they removed the carpets where she was found and they tested that. So I imagine they still have that evidence. And with like how DNA technology is today, and even you hear cases like the Golden State Killer was found through
it's
like
crazy.
Those genealogy sites.
Yeah.
There has to be something, and even to re-interview the people that they talk to. I mean, it's 25 years later. I'm sure people have a change of heart, or maybe there's something that they knew back then that they didn't want to share.
Who did they interview as suspects?
Well,
that's what I was kind of digging at when I said, did you get into like the police files and like, is there access to see who was supposed to be a suspect?
Well, there's two trains of thought. When this first happened, everyone thought it was just like some crazy, like, psycho killer that was targeting agents and just randomly killed her, like a Ted Bundy or something like that.
Because if we pause a second and now you think about, like, that's on the front page of the paper, right? Like, it's not, that's people are waking up to that story on the paper, and that it isn't how it was now. So like that's a crazy word of mouth where neighbors are knocking on each other's door and probably talking about that. The realty business is probably shook up.
Yeah, it did. It shook up. It changed the way they did things in the industry. But if you think about if this was a random person, they would have had a lot of knowledge about that house.
Yeah.
Which I don't believe the average person didn't. And when this happened...
Who were the homeowners? Were they still around at the time?
They were around. They had just decided to move. It was a local dentist and his wife. And they,
never trust a dentist. It could be the dentist.
No.
The dentist.
It wasn't him. It wasn't him. They were actually very distraught about what happened.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And no, it wasn't him. But going back to like this random person just killing her, again, they would have had prior knowledge about this house. This house was everything. If you wanted to commit a murder or do something shady, this location in this house would have been perfect. But when this happened in 97, police referenced a case that happened in Decatur, Illinois. There was another realtor named Sherry Lewis who was killed. She was beaten and strangled in a vacant home that she was to show. But they found no link between that murder and Charlotte. So that was kind of, shelved pretty easily. There was an instance in 98 in New Jersey where there was a random guy just like calling realtors and probably saying obscene or vulgar things. And detectives there went there specifically, obviously, to, see what he was doing. But they wanted to make sure that he had nothing to do with Charlotte's murder, which they ruled that out. And I think in 2012, there was also a local guy who targeted realtors. I think like over 200 realtors. He compiled their names. He found out their Facebook pages, where they were, where they went to church, all this information because he wanted to rape and kill a realtor. And he actually went to a model home and tried to lure a realtor into like one of the bedrooms, and she refused, tried to lure her again. And, she got like another male coworker to go in there, and subsequently he was arrested and he's in jail. And this guy, at the time he was arrested, he was 27. I think he would have been like 13 when this happened. So he couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is, if you look at like even these two guys, they targeted a number of agents, not just one. If you wanted to target an agent, why not pick the agent who had the home listed? It was a woman. I'm not going to reveal her name just for privacy reasons because she's still active in our association. But why Charlotte? And so I really don't think this was a random person. And at the time, police didn't say, realtors, watch out, this is a random person, lock your doors, lock your windows. There was never any
news announcement.
No, they never said if there was a motive. But they said robbery wasn't a motive. She wasn't sexually assaulted. This was a personal killing. Somebody was really pissed off at her, I believe. And to shoot her in the face, this was a really beautiful woman. And to take away one of her best assets, her face, to disfigure her in the end, to me, sent a message like, fuck you. I'm going to take away the one thing that you love the most, or is like your most attractive feature, is your beautiful face.
It's very interesting to dig into it, because with the location being back like that, and then with her being a popular, attractive realtor who's becoming successful because she's working hard, it kind of lays down like, it's so you got to remove yourself from how things are now, which I'm doing during the story. And when you really just sit back and kind of be like, all right, well, who knew the house? Who knew it was there? So if you don't know anything about that house, you're kind of out of it. And like what you said, if it was a random murder, I don't think it would have been a strangling and then shot in the face and then in the back of the head, because that's interesting with the way she was killed like that. Like it's not something that would just be a random, you know what I mean? Like there probably would have been like a struggle, or like, you know what I mean? Like it's not really lining up to that scenario. So who did they interview, or who did they discuss as being possible suspects in murdering her?
Well, so we're ruling out a random person, and obviously like the next person they look at when someone who's married is murdered is the spouse.
Yeah.
And the husband, like 3 months after the murder, they announced that the husband and the family were officially cleared.
Yeah.
And he was officially verified at being at his job. He worked at a pipe company or some type of piping company in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. And he was verified at being there at 1:30 in the afternoon. There's some reports that say that she was killed anywhere between 12 and 3 or 1 and 3. It's not exactly known, but he was cleared.
What that's got to, because then when you were telling it on the podcast, and you were talking about how like the family wasn't checking in because they were used to the behavior of a realtor, just kind of like, like I'm sure you understand, and how it is for me, it's like your days aren't really structured that well. You're just kind of like come and go, and I prefer that. So like it works for my lifestyle, but like when my friends call me, most of the time my phone goes to voicemail, and like you can't really get a hold of me that much anymore, and then like I get back to you. So like that was really settling in and like kind of setting the tone when like you were kind of leading up to, before you explained what happened, is like the family not being able to get a hold of her, and then like that much time passes. So in the beginning I didn't think it was the husband at all. Like there wasn't any inkling, and then I don't know, it's just kind of like, even all the descriptions and everything that you're going through, it's like, well, somebody had to have been involved in this that's connected to her. I don't think somebody wandered onto a secluded farmhouse with weapons and then waited for someone to show up, or you know what I mean? Like, yeah. It to me, it doesn't seem random at all.
There were some things that people questioned. I don't think authorities, but I think friends questioned about the husband. He was cleared of actually doing the crime, but then some people thought, well, did he have her murdered? Because one of the theories was this like a contract hit? That was one of the theories too that they had in the news. And the interesting thing about their relationship was, like I said, Charlotte was a young mother. Her daughter, Christy, was from a previous relationship. When she got together with her husband, Christian, they didn't want kids, but her husband really loved her daughter, Christy, and treated Christy like she was his own daughter. Even his family treated her like she was his own daughter. But between Charlotte and Christian, there had been some friction because allegedly he had suspected that maybe she was having an affair with somebody, which she denied. She never, was forthcoming and said, no, that's true. But they would argue about it because he felt that, she was having an affair. So, some people thought, well, maybe, he had her killed because he was, mad because he thought that she was having an affair. But even if you were to hire somebody to have killed her, the person hiring would have to have knowledge about that house. And he was, I believe, a creature of habit. He was born and raised in Easton. He owned an investment property in Easton. They lived in Easton before they built this house in Bethlehem Township. I don't believe that he would have been familiar enough with that area to pick that. And the other thing is you have to choose somebody who's loyal to you, that isn't going to say anything. And how would you pick someone that's not going to, crack under pressure? And I just don't think, I don't think he had anything to do with it either way. I'm going to put him at the bottom of my list.
All right, so we got the husband at the bottom of the list. Who else did they interview for the murder?
Well, they interviewed a lot of realtors and a lot of friends. And again, Charlotte was like super successful. She started off, she worked at Weichert for 9 years in the Easton office. Then when she was there, like her last year, she had gotten into like a tiff with another agent there. And it had to do with Charlotte getting listings in an area where this agent was known to do most of their business. And this agent was really pissed that Charlotte was kind of encroaching on their area. And, there was tension. And apparently Charlotte was always self-conscious about her nose. She always thought she had like somewhat of a hook nose. And this agent, I guess, kind of knew it. And I don't know if they drew something about her nose or they wrote something, but they made some type of derogatory statement, or they had it in the office or posted it about her nose, which is like really petty and really mean. And so you think, okay, so did this agent have anything to do with it? But the thing is, when this altercation, happened, I don't think it was a physical altercation, but, there was tension. When this incident happened, that was one of the reasons why Charlotte left and went to the Bethlehem office. And she was there for a year when she was killed. So you think about this agent that didn't like her. To me, if you work with somebody and you don't like them, the best day of your life is when they come in and say, I'm giving my 2 weeks notice, I'm leaving, because your problems are solved.
Absolutely.
So I feel that when Charlotte left, then that agent, was like, okay, I have my territory back.
Yeah.
And I think a year is a long time for you to get over something.
Especially work bullshit.
Yeah. So that person, to me, is like on the bottom of the list. And then it goes into like, was there an agent that was jealous of her, because she was a top agent?
Yeah.
It was an agent in her office. She comes in, maybe there were agents. Maybe there was an agent there that was like the top agent, and Charlotte comes in and she blows everyone out of the water. Was this like a competitive thing? But the office in Bethlehem at the time was the top office of Weichert in the region. And there was like 47 to 50 agents in that office. And every agent in that office was a top agent.
Yeah.
In order for that office to stand on its own and be recognized for surpassing sales the previous year. So I don't think it was a personal rival.
So if those two are off of it, and, at this point, like, how long was it going until they started really kind of considering it a cold case, and they weren't like looking into it? I know the technology and that's different, and I know that stuff happens around here, and we kind of I don't know, like stuff has happened in Nazareth, and it's just stuff that like doesn't normally happen. So like we don't have a detective here, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like how long until this starts just becoming something that's just unsolved and they're on to the next crime?
Yeah, I don't know. Like every so often they would update, you'd see articles, and they just didn't have a motive. They didn't have a suspect. They were being very low key about what they did know. I know that they probably did a good job because they had helicopters out there. They did, I don't know exactly what they do, but it's like a grid.
Yeah.
They formed that grid, to see what they could find. They combed the woods behind the house. 2 weeks, like up until I think 2 weeks after she was murdered, they would stop motorists and they would ask them questions Like I said, they tested her clothing and everything. The only thing that I believe that they have an inkling of who did it, because in 2010, John Morganelli, who was the DA at the time in Northampton County, he had took that evidence along with some other cold cases and had them presented to a grand jury. And nothing ever came of it, which means probably the grand jury didn't feel like there was enough evidence to arrest somebody. But they had something.
Yeah, they wouldn't just have done it.
No. So it's just a matter, and we watch all these crime shows or even in real life, they arrest somebody and then the person did it, but there's just not enough evidence to actually prove that they did it, and then they get off scot-free.
So it leaves us down to this. Who do you think did it?
Well, when we go back to these phone calls, because we talk about the first phone call that was made on September 10th that Charlotte took at the office, and this person made the appointment for the following day, September 11th. Well, what she said was she drove out there. I think the appointment was supposed to be for 1 p.m. and it was pouring down rain. I want to add that too. And she was very vain. She lost a lot of weight. She cared about her appearance, her hair, her clothes. She did get a nose job recently, within the past year. But it was pouring down rain, and she drove out to this location, to the home, and this person never showed up. So then she drove back to the office, and it's like a 20-minute, 7-mile ride back to the Weichert office, which is located on Channersville Road. And she gets back there. She goes into the office. Short time later, she gets a phone call, and it's the same guy. And what she said was they got caught up in traffic, and could she go back out there again? So she gets in her car, drives in the rain, drives the 7-mile ride, 20-minute, trip back to this home. And that was the last that she was seen. And, the first phone call, police couldn't really pinpoint where it came from. But that second phone call that was made on September 11th was actually traced to a payphone in the Westgate Mall.
Ah, it's so crazy, the Westgate Mall.
Which is directly across the street. Like, literally, if you stand outside the Weichert office, now I think, now it's still it looks like a stone farmhouse, but I think it's part of their title agency. But back then, that stone house was the actual agency. If you stand outside of that agency, that building, you look directly across the street. That's the main entrance to the Westgate Mall. And when you walked in that entrance,
they used to have the payphones off to the right or the left. I forget which where it was, but
it was on the left.
Yeah, so and there was a shitload of payphones.
Yeah,
there.
it was a bank. It was a brick wall, and there was a wall of payphones.
Yeah.
So that person was watching her for some. Did they watch for her to come back? Did they watch for her to leave? So that was like a key point here, and a lot of people thought, okay, so this person was watching her. And the other question is, why didn't they show up?
Yeah.
Were they somewhere where they couldn't get away? And the other thing to think of too is the time of day that this happened. This was a Thursday afternoon. This wasn't a person who worked a 9-to-5 job. This is a person who had probably a similar schedule where they had the flexibility that they could leave.
So what are you thinking?
Well, this is all alleged, but some of the information that I received was that she was having some type of romantic relationship with a client. And it was believed that this person who wanted to see the house was actually this client that she was having a romantic relationship with. So my theory is, and I could be wrong, it's just a theory, is that there was never a first phone call. Like, she was just at the office and she just maybe for some reason with this person, they had agreed to meet the next day for a rendezvous or whatever. And she said to the listing agent, hey, I have somebody that wants to look at the house. And the listing agent's going to take her word for it. You don't have to have proof that, you don't have to provide the name of the person or whatever. She did have a planner, but back then they called it a day timer. And there's some conflicting information whether the name that she wrote down was fake or not. But subsequently, she also had the key to that house. So she, could go show it or whatever. By having that key and being an agent and knowing that this was a secluded vacant house, this would have been a perfect place for her to meet with somebody that she was allegedly having an affair with. And my belief is that either she wanted to break it off with this person. This person came with a gun. So this person had some animosity towards her. And my theory is, because she was found like fully clothed with their clothing on, I think they went there, they met, and maybe this person confronted her with some information like, hey, I heard you're thinking about breaking up with me, or maybe there was someone else that she was interested in. And the thing that threw me off, and it threw a lot of people off that I talked to this about, was her being strangled. Like, why would you strangle somebody first
and then
shoot them? And it really, and that was never revealed where the cord in the autopsy, it said that it was a ligature strangulation and that the cord had a spiral pattern, which leads you to believe that it was like the telephone cords from back then, the spiral cord.
Yeah.
And they never said if they recovered it or anything. Again, they were very like tight-lipped about everything. So if you think about it, if you were going to kill somebody and you have like your gun in your pocket, then you have like your telephone cord, it just seems like kind of cumbersome. Like, okay, I got to pull out my cord and then strangle her and then shoot her. I think what happened was they went there, some type of argument happened between the two. She was somewhere where there was a phone. I think she grabbed the phone maybe to call for help because, we didn't have cell phones. She had a pager and she had a car phone. But I think she grabbed the receiver or whatever, and that person, tried to grab it out of her hands. I think they took the cord, got it around her neck, and then shot her in the back of the head and then, in the face.
Do they know if she died from the strangulation, or was she dead already when he shot her, or whoever shot her?
They didn't determine that. They wouldn't say whether she was shot first or strangled.
Is that just information that they don't release publicly because it's a cold case?
I think because I think the thought is the less information they release, then they have a better chance of convicting the person if they find them. Because when if they release so much information, anybody can come in and be like, I did it, because
Yeah. I didn't know what to think. One, I didn't get the second half of the podcast, but by the time this airs, both will have come out, because I think that's the way you want to do it.
I think the reason why I think this was somebody she knew is because she grew up, her mom owned a bar in Peaburg. So her mom was a tough person because she has to deal with rowdy bar patrons or whatever.
It changes you working at a bar.
Yes. And she grew up in Phillipsburg. And when she was a young single mom, she lived on the south side of Easton, which was rough. And she was described to me as a street, smart, tough woman. Like, she didn't take any nonsense.
Yeah.
And her being a veteran, having 10 years in the business, she didn't make what I call a rookie mistake.
No, she wouldn't have put herself in that position with a stranger.
No. And there's things like,
the women probably talked to each other in the office to let each other know that they were going somewhere if they were meeting someone.
Yeah. I mean, they knew where she was going.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, is some of the agents, well, they didn't have names, but, they were interviewed or they were quoted in articles, numerous articles involving the murder. And somebody, it was anonymous, said that, it was sloppy what she did. And she wasn't sloppy. She knew, the protocol is you're not supposed to enter a vacant home alone.
Yeah.
Which I don't think she did. And because she was just so self-aware and just like a tough person, she wouldn't have let anybody in her personal space that she didn't know. And in order for this crime to happen, they were in her personal space because she allowed them. She knew them. And, some people say, well, maybe she was like walking ahead of the person was behind her and strangled her. And
doesn't make sense.
No, as a realtor, that's the first thing that you do with a client that you don't know, is that you have them walk in front of you. You have them lead and be like, the bedroom's here. You don't go into a room, like you don't walk into a basement with a client that you don't know. There's just certain things. And I don't think this was the case. I think that she picked this house for them to meet up, and she unknowingly didn't know what this person had in store for her. And I do think they have an inkling, but again, they just don't have all the evidence, because this person had, if let's say they killed her like at 2:30 p.m. that day, she wasn't found till the following morning, like at 7.
Yeah.
So they had all that time to get rid of evidence, if they had anything on their clothes, like they had a good lead on detectives.
It's, your mind's racing on who would do it, and then you obviously have done your research, and then as soon as you said that it was probably some romantic thing, it made complete and total sense. I know people who have lost their cool in situations, not that have led to murder, but I've worked in factories where there's been relationships that happen between two people that work there. I've dated people I've worked with, and it never works out correctly, and it makes a very bizarre, odd pressure and things. And then when you have somebody who won't let go of the idea of, that woman was probably that person's escape, and then when that person, because I've seen stuff like this play out where one person dabbles over, but they're not giving up their family and their spouse. They're doing this to get out of a situation, or it's something that they're going after because they're not getting it at home. And when the other person who's looking for something that they have already, it really creates a neurotic, unstable person where you start getting into situations where people are following someone to work. They don't believe what you're telling them. Even when you have somebody cheat on you, and what that mentally does to you, where you're starting to watch them and then you lose your mind. And that makes way more sense as to what happened here than somebody was waiting in a closet. Like, I really like the way you laid it out, and I'm guessing that's what you do in the second podcast. But do you, the phone thing, like, that doesn't make sense that somebody would bring a phone cord and a gun. If it was somebody doing this for some kind of serial killing, there more than likely would have been rape involved. There would have been more things that made it unnatural. But how you pointed it out, where they shot her in the face and she was vain and cared about that. Now, that's somebody who probably had listened to this woman tell her inner insecurities. It's something that they probably spoke with after an intimate moment where, you know what I don't like about myself? You don't just have those conversations with people. That stuff comes up when you're comfortable. So if somebody would have killed her in that fashion, it's somebody that was connected to her emotionally. And then when you started talking about the phone call across from the Westgate Mall, now you have somebody watching them, which means that they know their schedule and they know where they're going to be. And then when you said that the first call wasn't trackable and then the second call was, well, it doesn't make sense that first call wasn't trackable. And I think the way you're leaning with this, in my opinion, and this is all allegedly, but I believe that now that you kind of explained it, that's more than likely what happened.
And it's hard for me because I think that if I knew her in real life, I would have liked her. I think she was a very likable person. And what makes it kind of difficult for me doing this, kind of like theory situation is, you find things about people that maybe aren't favorable. And by doing that, and like my theory is that maybe she allegedly was involved with somebody, it makes it seem like I'm being disrespectful because this woman was brutally murdered and there's people that loved and miss her, like her family and friends. And I'm not doing it to make her look bad, is I really want the person who did this to be responsible, because this person has been free for 25 years.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, is you have to consider the age of this person.
How old
now.
was she?
She was 40. So the person has to be 65, maybe even 70 years old.
That's how old my parents are. They're still functioning. They still know what's going on, which means that person's still living over stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you get to live the rest of your life. Meanwhile, you've shattered and ruined multiple people who are still probably dealing with that day now, post-traumatic stress, stuff like that. You go through a lot when somebody passes, let alone a murder. So it's like you've changed the course of a ton of people, and then for you to just be out doing your own thing, or the possibility of it happening again, or you don't know if they moved out of the area and it did happen again. Or
that they even intend to murder her. Maybe they just had a gun, maybe just to kind of scare her, like,
Yeah, because it was a 22, right?
A 22.
Yeah, that stuck out. Yeah. That stuck out when you said that too.
Because I don't know anything about guns, so I don't know what like someone said, well, that's a small caliber.
Yeah, it's a smaller caliber weapon. Like my father would use it to shoot a groundhog. It wouldn't be what you would choose to kill somebody with if you were plotting a murder. You know what I mean? Like, it was probably just something they had, and that was their only access to it. I don't know. That did stick out when they said it was a 22. I was like, oh, man.
Still trying
But that also might be why they shot her twice.
I think probably because I don't know. I think of, I was trying to imagine it happening. Like, they got her from behind, they strangled her, she fell down. Then, they shot her in the back of the head, and did they then turn her over and shoot her in the face? Or was it, if you shoot somebody in the back of the head at close range, you know that it's done.
Yeah.
Why in the face under, her left eye? I mean, it was, I was told it was a closed casket, obviously.
Yeah.
But the other question, too, is that second phone call that was made from the Westgate Mall. Like, I'm trying to think of, did she really go to the house the first time? That's what she said. I mean, maybe the person got lost, and maybe they called her on her car phone and said, look, I couldn't find the place. Maybe she said, look, I'll go back to the office, call me from the mall, and then you can follow me. I don't think the reason why that second phone call was made was to stalk her. I think it was just a matter of convenience.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, when somebody's like, hey, this is over between us, it could have been a meetup for that, and then it would have been like, oh, okay, like, you think this is over, and then they set up the whole thing. I don't know. Like, that's what makes it a cold case. You don't know.
But I do think it was, again, I think it was someone she knew, definitely.
Yeah, it doesn't really point to, when you describe but I like that you set it up. You set it up for your theory, and you kind of take away, slowly as you go through the podcast, you're taking away suspects. It's like you're playing a game of Clue, and you're pulling it back, and in the beginning you're like, all right, but then when you started describing where the house is, and I know that area, you're not stumbling upon that. You're not finding it and being like, this is a great place to murder someone. You don't know if somebody's coming or going.
And that's what, like, me as a realtor, I've only been licensed for 4 years, but I looked at it from a realtor's point of view.
Yeah.
What did she do wrong? What did she do right? And when I think about it, and the other thing too is she had a full schedule. She was a top agent, and that doesn't happen when you sit behind a desk all day.
Yeah.
She had appointments in the morning, and she did have appointments scheduled later for that day, which obviously she missed. But she set aside, I feel, a good chunk of time for this appointment, and to allegedly drive out to a home in the rain, then drive back to the office, and drive back again. That's a big chunk of her day to waste on somebody that she allegedly didn't know.
It would have been, because now if you put it in that perspective, even going through a breakup when somebody comes to your work, I mean, it hasn't happened to me in years, but when you're in your 20s or you're a little bit younger or you're in some kind of shit like that, I definitely know people who like their like girlfriends show up to work and then they're like crying on the porch, and like you have to deal with that. So, and then you don't want it public at work. So it's like if you have a full schedule and then you got this like shit going on over here and all you're doing is trying to put that away because it was something that happened, but you got a family and you love them and you have kids and you're building something with somebody else, and you have your job, but you still have to like get this thing out of here, you know.
And she was also known that she wouldn't have been like the 5-stage clinger in the relationship.
No, it sounds like she, you know.
She would have said, look, it's over.
It's over. Done.
We're done.
Yeah.
And I think that person
That's where that bar mentality comes from.
And I think that person probably felt dismissed.
Used. Yeah. It makes way more sense than, you know.
But again, I could be wrong, but
So where does that leave you? Like, how do you stop the itch? I know you got to go on to your next podcast.
I do, but you know what? The itch won't be stopped until they make an arrest.
Yeah, but I mean, do you let go of the case? Is there more cases you get attached to? Well, this one obviously because of a realtor, but like as a creator and a podcaster and whatnot, you have to put all of this attention into your next episode. So like, how do you leave that at bay? Or, you know, because I know we talked briefly and you're new to this, like, do you want to push this to a point where you start like getting other people involved and then you can kind of get the ball rolling?
I would like it to be more talked about. I would like people to listen to this podcast or my podcast and think, okay, maybe there's something that I could have said back then.
Yeah.
Because it's 25 years, people have a change of heart. And maybe it was the same situation where they thought that, you know, maybe she was having a romantic relationship with somebody, and maybe somebody in her office or friends didn't want to say that to authorities because, again, it's like it was
taboo back then.
Yeah, like, oh, this person.
When I was a kid, it wasn't normal for a family to be divorced. It was like the weird kid at school was, his parents were separated, and there was always this like cloud above them. Now, people get divorced in 2 weeks. And it's not a bad thing anymore. Not that it ever was a bad thing. It was just looked that way because of the generation. Now it's like, you know, there's people who aren't married. They have kids. It's not how it used to be. So back then it would be more of not allowing that out in the air, where if today something like that happened, someone would be like, yeah, there's probably having an affair. That stuff happens. Where back then it's weird to step back in time and put yourself there. And it's crazy how connected everybody is, and you almost know too much about everyone's business anymore.
Yeah. There's no being anonymous.
No.
But going back to like how, I mean, I have to move. I mean, obviously I'm going to be doing more podcasts, but my point in like doing Charlotte's case or like other cold cases that come up is not just to report on it. Like the first episode, I could have just did the first episode and ended it and that's it, because, you know, but that would have been like boring, and what's the point of doing a podcast?
I like when they do when you have a 3 or 4 part series in something like this, because it always leaves you hanging, and then like you get the music coming in, you're like, shit, it's over. Like, but I want more.
You know, people need to think about the case.
Yeah.
Because maybe somebody does know something that could help. Because the newspaper, they're not going to say their theories because of fear.
Especially the way things are now.
No. But I'm doing it, and you know, I'm a little nervous because I'm still an active member of the, you know, my local realtor association, and I'm talking about something that happened 25 years ago, and some of those people that were in the office are still practicing, and
that's crazy. Have you talked to any of them?
No.
Like how far do you want to push it? Do you want to push it to a point where like, and I don't know, because you're also new to this, is like, do you want to keep doing like side episodes on this and like grow it as like a continuing case where you can go and talk to people there? Like, I want to go to the house. Is the house still there? Like, there's a lot like that.
The house is still there. There's new owners.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't, I don't think the new owners that bought it after, I don't think they wanted to be interviewed. And I think it would be a conflict of interest.
Do you have to tell someone that there was a murder there as a realtor?
In PA, no. You don't have
That's
to.
crazy.
I know.
That's
I
crazy.
think in California you do.
I wonder if people have ever like just shown up the next day and been like, "You son of a bitches! You didn't tell me somebody was murdered in this goddamn house. The neighbors told me." Like, oof, that would be terrible.
I think the first time it was after it was sold, I think it was like a private sale.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the new owners know about what happened.
They have to.
Yeah. But like I said, if you drive by, you can't see the home. So it's not like you
see. That's like spooky to me. Like we used to do that as kids. We used to drive by Hexenkopf Road and be like, "Oh, the witch's rock."
Yeah.
So like to me, it's like we did drive around and like pretend to be detectives, and you know what I mean. That's what you did when you weren't trying to get beer and doing dumb shit back in the day. You drove around on back roads and looked at scary houses. So like that would be appealing to me. But I didn't know, like, you know, do you want to push it to where you're in, you know, Reddit forums and you're trying to get other people to help you?
Yeah,
like
that way, yes.
Like what was it? Like don't fuck with cats? Like that kind of how that whole thing spiraled? Are you looking to go that route? Or are you just kind of looking to, you know, get into something else, another episode?
Well,
I know you're going to do more episodes.
I'm going to do more episodes, but on the side.
It seems like you're connected to this.
I am connected. And as far as like, you know, I don't want to interview people or ask around like, you know, my local association, because maybe
that's when you'll probably start getting into shit with being a realtor.
Yeah, and I don't want to put people in a position that don't want to talk about it. In fact, when this Lehigh Valley Live article came out, they reprinted quotes from back then, and there's names in the article that I recognize. I'm like, oh, these people are still active. I'm like, I wonder how they feel about this. So
yeah.
I want to respect that. I want to keep it separate.
Yeah. It's cool, but you could definitely, I don't know, like just sitting here creatively thinking on like how far you could go with this and like what you could do with these episodes.
I
and
was
like,
even thinking of calling, is it called Cold Case? The woman that stars.
Well, I'm surprised. I was going to ask you if, you know, was it ever highlighted on Unsolved Mysteries?
Never. I never saw it on like 48 Hours ID. There's a show called Cold Case, and the host is a woman by Kelly Lynn Siegler, I believe.
Yeah.
She's like this prosecutor or ex-prosecutor from Texas, and she's like a badass.
Yeah.
She is
Walker,
like
Texas.
She is a really cool, badass woman, and that show primarily focuses on cold cases. I even thought about, you know, writing in and say, hey, why don't you, you know,
it ain't gonna hurt anything.
No.
Especially if you're like, you know, it seems like you're just genuinely interested in the results. It's not so much of getting the content for the episode, which you do, but you're almost double dipping into a passion where you want the answers to the crimes that aren't solved. And then when you start kind of overturning these rocks, it's like, all right, well, why, if I'm telling you about all of this, how have not any of you not noticed it?
I think a lot of it is, again, I admired her as a person because she came from nothing.
Yeah.
And she worked her ass off. She didn't rely on a guy to get where she was in life. And in fact, at her funeral, her daughter included a card that she gave to her the previous Mother's Day. And inside it read something like, I appreciate the fact that you taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet.
Yeah.
And she, I think 5 weeks prior to her murder, she moved into a home that her and her husband built in Bethlehem Township, a brand new, beautiful ranch home. They used to live in Easton and kind of like a high crime area. And she moved more to the suburbs. I mean, she really, at 40 years old, she was living the American dream.
Yeah.
And having that successful
coming from
career.
nothing.
Yes. So to have that taken away from her sucks, and the person not being held responsible, and it just having it go cold for 25 years. A beautiful woman doesn't end up dead in a beautiful home for no reason.
Yeah. That's wild. That's cool. I definitely would like to do this again. I knew this is how it was going to go, but you know, you podcast, so I figured you would know how to do this. But then, you know, once we started and got into the case, you could tell everything dropped around you, and you didn't care that you were on this podcast anymore. You were no longer intimidated by it, and you were just telling me information. Like, you're genuinely passionate about doing this, and it shows in the craft that you do. And you know, I never met you, and we just talked on the phone, and you never know how anyone's gonna hold themselves down here. And it doesn't seem like you're doing any of this because you're wanting notoriety for podcasting. You're just genuinely interested in this type of stuff, which makes it so appealing to me because you give a shit. And then on top of it, you are actually interested in solving them, which is like such a crazy feat to even attempt, which you're going to. And it would be really cool to do these. And like, I think there's more to this, and I would like to bring in like, because there's going to be other episodes, but I would like to bring Jesse in just because he has the bounty hunter stuff, and then our bail bondsman, and then it would be cool to bring in Jim from Wolfpack, who actually searches and has gone through an event like that. So I think it'd be cool to like. There's something here, and I would love to have you back on. It was nice not podcasting and actually just talking how we would if I worked with you. You know what I mean? Like. Sometimes I miss that from not having a regular job of just talking to somebody about something they're passionate with, and you just get into like a murder mystery thing. My mom, I share conversations like this with her because she watches a lot of that stuff. So it was awesome to have you on. I want to give you a chance to plug how anybody can listen to these other episodes, because now I started on the newest one, but now I want to go all the way back because these are all primarily based just in Pennsylvania, correct?
Yeah, everything's in Pennsylvania.
So for the fact that this went on in the Westgate Mall, like as soon as you said that, I was like, oh shit. I'm like, they had the rides out front, or like, and I think the rides might have been next to the payphones, but there was like 6 or 7 phones there. And then I was like, because I used to go over to the Westgate Mall all the time because of Amateur Athlete.
Yeah.
So it's like I was always in there because of skateboarding, and Joe was there. And then, and then I'm start thinking like, man, like that's crazy. Because there is an incident where somebody I know was in the mall that day when that phone call was made. Like, it's super local. I like that. I like everything you do. I think you're a professional in your podcast, and the more you keep doing, the more it's going to get better, and I can't wait to see where it goes. So I want to give you a chance to kind of let everybody know what your social media is. I'm going to have links and everything, but how anybody can listen to the episodes that we're referring to and how to get a hold of you.
So anywhere that you can download a podcast. So I'm on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google. There's a bunch of random ones, but the main ones like Apple and Spotify, that's where you can find it. And my social media is just Departed in Pennsyltucky. Instagram, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's primarily it. And I'm trying to figure that out now because they changed the algorithm. We have to do reels to get like noticed. You can't just post a photo. So I don't know that. I'm trying to figure out the game, how to get listeners through social media.
Yeah.
That's a whole
I can help you with that stuff.
It's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, because you can easily take the audio from it and then run, because there's a lot of times comedians do that with jokes and stuff, but you can run the audio and then have like the logo from the podcast behind that, and then you can turn that into a reel, or you can put different things. You can match video. It's editing, but if you have somebody helping with you, that it's not rocket science on what you can do. But yeah, Instagram is a blessing and a curse sometimes with the algorithm and how that works.
I loved it because I love photography, so I liked just really beautiful photos or people posting a photo and just looking at it and having a little words. Not like Facebook, or people like they tell you what they're eating, where they're going, and it's just Facebook is a whole nother conversation. But I loved Instagram, and then they were like, they want to be more like TikTok and have the reels.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just got to go with the flow.
Yeah, I mean, there's different things you can do, and plus it always levels itself out, so it'll come back around, and there are people who do prefer just the pictures and stuff, but there's plenty of stuff you can do, and I'll show you with clips we can take from this, and you could definitely put audio over pictures, and, if you could easily, like, find, like the newspaper articles and just kind of, like, have an editor run, like, the article while you're talking about it. Like, you could do cool shit. I'll help you with it.
Right,
you genuinely care about it,
that.
so I don't care about helping you. It's the people who try and attach themselves to this to kind of make money. It's easy to read, and I don't work with them, but
that's
you just genuinely are trying to do this, and it's fun. Like, I see people who are trying to build stuff, whether they're trying to build a business, whether they're trying to build stuff. Like, one of my favorite things is like when I saw that logo, I'm like, you could easily do t-shirts. And then you're like, well, I wanted to, and I can't find somebody. And I'm like, well, I have somebody in the network that can do it. And like, it's cool to be at a point now where like, I can just hook people up with each other and then just be like, cool. Like, I'm not like, well, there's a fee from me and I want this. It's like, all right, well, cool. Go talk to Kyle. Kyle's building his own t-shirt company. So like, that'll help Kyle. Or like, hey, I need a plumber. Cool. You like the first time when I realized like how the show helped Jared, when we like had a conversation, if it was working with what he was doing, like it was awesome to hear that like it really does help people, and I'm not just like paying Facebook for a bunch of numbers and being like, we hit 1 million views and give me more money, local businesses that don't have them. It's been cool. This didn't start as a thing to help local businesses. It was always to tell somebody's story, and it's always to the core. But then when, you know, enough people started telling me about like what the show was doing for their businesses and the small amount it was helping, and it was becoming a platform, you know, it's been cool. And I'm not changing it to make money off of any of these people. I just genuinely like helping people.
It's a good way to network without being cheesy.
Yeah. Everybody who comes, like when I first started doing this, and then I was like, someone was like, hey, can you get me t-shirts printed? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, can you do this, this, and this? And then like they started turning into clients. Like I was like, oh, holy shit. Because my one friend was like, you have no clue what you're doing. He's like, you have a massive network because you're bringing so many people through that front door. And I'm just addicted to, what's your story? And then, you know, people hit me up and they're like, oh, that was so, I already know like 5 or 6 of my friends that are going to be like, dude, I didn't know that there was a crime podcast like that. And, you know, my friend Kara always is into like the murder shit, and she'll send me links on that, and like, you know, it's the perfect time of year for that as well. But like, you know, I just generally like helping people, so there's a lot of stuff that we could do with that. And like I said, if you have an editor and you got somebody who's going to do the work for you, you can definitely grow it more. But
yeah,
it's also cool because like you're not going to stop regardless of what your numbers are. You're just going to keep digging and talking to the police and another story. And, you know, that's my best advice for people is like, don't give a shit about any of that. And if you truly like creating, it's just going to be an outlet that's fun and takes you out of the bullshit that you put up with on a daily basis.
Because I haven't even started to monetize yet.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because everyone's like, you're not getting, no, I mean, eventually.
Well, see, the problem is like when I started, there wasn't anyone monetizing, and we didn't know what to do because I left my apartment and we had to pay rent for the studio. So we needed to pay the studio. So that was the only need for us to monetize. When we first started, I didn't even care about any of that because I just thought it would help out my apparel company. But then the moment Joe Rogan got paid $300 million from Spotify, people expect to be paid to podcast. And that's not how it works. Like Joe Rogan had a massive following and got massive amounts of numbers because he was on TV and had a podcast and then created a really cool, unique show. Not everyone can do that. It's very hard to get numbers up. It's very hard to do something original without trying to get celebrities on, to do interviews that you don't give a shit about. You just want numbers. And if you pay attention to numbers and you listen to people like who tell you you're not getting monetized, you shouldn't be getting monetized. You just started. Like you need to put a shitload of work in and make something that people enjoy listening to, and it needs to be creative, and it should be years of work before you get paid. I've been doing this shit for over 7 years, probably 8 at this point, and I didn't start making money till last year, and that's because I built a network and a conversation with people because I helped their business. And it's not helped by the podcast. It's helped because I give a shit and I try and help their businesses. That is the only reason I get money. And people are always like, well, how do you make money off that? How do you make money off of that? I busted my ass and built something from nothing and created a brand and a logo. And, you know, the only reason I can tell you what you should do with your reels is because I had to do all that. You shouldn't be given money if you didn't do any of that stuff. So it's ludicrous that people are like, we are not making any money. How new are you to this?
Me?
Yeah.
I just started in June, and
exactly.
I know that I'm not at the point yet. But I guess my point is that I love it so much,
of course,
that I'm just going to keep going.
But that's when it works. If you made it about glorifying the murders and making money, you would either have to have a following already that was into that, which is a thing that people are into, and I'm sure those are the podcasts that you're referring to. But then it's like, you know, you got to build it. You got to build it up. You got to keep doing it. But you could totally monetize off of what you're doing, whether it's apparel or views, or like, you know, you could go nonprofit and give everything you make back to helping solve the cases if you wanted to. There's always an angle on building a business, but I think with with Joe Rogan getting paid, it was a blessing and a curse, because now everybody just thinks, like when I was on Netflix, people thought I have all this money now. Bro, I was prepping for a pop-up that day. And then the next day I had to go cook cheeseburgers. Like, you know what I mean? My life didn't change. That's not how it works. Maybe in LA it works that way, but and then I watch what like these bigger guys are doing, like Burt Kreischer and all these other dudes. And like, what's cool is like, they're in Hollywood, right? And then like now they don't need anyone. Like they don't need an agent. They don't need someone booking anything. So you can create something that makes money. It's what I'm doing. It's going to take me five more years to kind of be at a point where like I want to be at, but I'm also opening a restaurant, which makes real money, but that's only happening because I started all of this. Like there's other things that happen outside of it. Like what would happen if you solved the case?
I would just keep going. It wouldn't stop me.
But I'm saying like that would be like national news. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
so like,
I kind of thought about that, and I thought, well, it's weird that I'm doing a podcast, because as you get older, you find out more things about yourself. And I find that I'm a little more introverted that I like. So I don't know how I would feel about that attention. And then I think about the person that did it. Would there be a mark on my head? Because is it possible that me talking about it would help solve it? Yeah. And
but then you see the documentaries like Don't Fuck with Cats, and it's like that just didn't happen. Like that, all that took place. It wasn't like they did a documentary during it. It was like that was a story about something that happened. So like with Reddit and all these forums and shit, there's definitely shit like that going on. I guarantee there's murder cases that were solved by a similar thing that you're doing that we don't know about because we're not from that area. But I think it's cool you're doing all this, and I think it's genuine and you want to do it, and I think you have a great podcast, and everybody should go check it out if you're into that style stuff, and I can't wait to have you back on. Thank you. It was great being here. Cool. Thank you for coming on. If you're a first-time listener, we would just keep talking. This is what happens. We're at like an hour and 40. Okay. Your first-time listener, first-time watcher, whatever you do, you can subscribe to the YouTube. You can go to neveragainstudio.com. That has everything. It has my apparel on there. If you want to buy any of the shirts, it goes right to Kyle's screen printing. He sponsors the podcast. And then we have all the episodes, all the YouTubes on there, all the links to everything. Subscribe to the YouTube. That's what I'm building up the most, because when we move, there's going to be a TV show, and it's going to be a network, and we're doing bigger things than podcasting. We're gonna have a brand new studio. We're gonna have the cafe. We're gonna have everything going on. So stay tuned. My Instagram is where you can get to contact me if you want to come on the show, you want to bullshit me, you want to check out everything we're doing. That's Never Again Studio on Instagram. So it's at Never Again Studio for primarily all my social media. I don't really ever answer anything off of the website for emails because I don't know how to get into it. So if you want to contact me, do it on Instagram. If you want apparel, there'll be links to everything in my Instagram. Go to the Instagram or the webpage. Thank you again. I'm excited to have you back on, and I want to build up a couple more people with us to discuss the next case that you want to do. Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Of course. Thank you so much. I believe in